Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we'll be talking about something pretty amazing.
Okay.
The vital role that animals play in keeping our planet healthy.
Sounds good to me.
I'm really excited to dig into this one. We're going to be looking at some really cool examples of just how interconnected ecosystems really are.
Yeah,
And we're going to be thinking about what might happen if some of those connections are broken.
that's a great point.
And most importantly, we'll discuss what we can do to make sure these creatures are protected. You know, for this deep dive, we're actually going to be taking a look at a podcast script
Oh, cool.
from India.
Okay.
It's called Wild Wonders,
Interesting.
kind of like a deep dive within a deep dive.
I like that.
I love that this script comes from India because it really highlights how this topic is important all over the world.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter if we're talking about a jungle in India
Right.
or a forest here in North America.
Yeah.
The same principles apply. The Wild Wonders script starts by talking about how every animal plays a role,
Yeah.
no matter how big or small.
Yeah, I agree.
Use the example of a lion,
Oh, right. The lion is the king.
but even something tiny like a dung beetle is important.
That's a good example.
Yeah, and I thought that was a great starting point. But something that we've all heard before, right? Like
Yeah.
we've all heard about the circle of life. So what are some of the ways that animals impact their environments that maybe aren't so obvious?
Well, one concept that I think is really fascinating is the idea of trophic levels.
Trophic levels.
Yeah, so basically it's a way of looking at how energy flows through an ecosystem.
Okay.
Like you have producers at the bottom.
Like plants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plants, they make their own food from the sun.
Yeah.
Then you have primary consumers, the herbivores that eat the plants.
Okay.
Then secondary consumers eat the herbivores.
So like a lion eating a zebra.
Exactly, and it goes on and on. The point is that each animal occupies a specific level in the system. And if you remove one animal, it can have a ripple effect on the entire ecosystem.
So it's not just about individual species, it's about how they fit into this complex web.
Exactly. And sometimes a species that might seem insignificant on its own can actually be what's called a keystone species.
Keystone species.
Yeah, it means that its impact on the ecosystem is much larger than you might think.
Okay, I need an example.
Okay, so imagine a kelp forest.
Like underwater.
Yeah, a lush kelp forest teeming with life.
Okay.
Now, sea urchins love to munch on kelp, and they can actually destroy these underwater forests if their population gets too big.
Oh, wow.
But sea otters, you know those cute furry creatures?
Yeah, I love sea otters.
They love to eat sea urchins, so by keeping the urchin population in check, the sea otters are actually protecting the entire kelp forest, which in turn provides a habitat for all sorts of other creatures.
So if you take away the otters, the whole system could collapse. That's incredible. Speaking of things collapsing, the Wild Wonders script also talks about what a world without animals would look like.
It's not a pretty picture.
No, it's not, but I feel like they don't really go into enough detail. Like, what would be some of the real consequences of losing biodiversity?
Well, for starters, our food supply would be in big trouble. Most of our crops rely on pollinators.
Oh, right, like bees and butterflies.
Exactly, and even bats. Without them, agricultural yields would plummet and we could face widespread food shortages.
And it's not just food, right?
No. There are so many other things we rely on animals for. Think about forests, for example.
Okay.
They play a huge role in regulating our climate.
How so?
They act as giant carbon sinks, absorbing CO2 from the atmosphere. But forests are complex ecosystems. They rely on a whole variety of animal species for things like seed dispersal, nutrient cycling, pest control. Without animals, our forests would be much less healthy and there would be far fewer of them.
So a whole cascade of negative effects.
Exactly.
What about the oceans? Would they be affected too?
Definitely the Wild Wonders script mentions the loss of large marine animals.
Like whales.
Exactly, whales. And it would be devastating.
Why is that?
Whales play a critical role in nutrient cycling. Their movements churn the water and bring essential nutrients up from the depths. This fertilizes the phytoplankton, which forms the base of the marine food web.
So without whales,
Entire ocean ecosystems could collapse.
it's kind of terrifying to think about. So the Wild Wonders script frames the solution as protecting these animal superheroes.
I like that.
Yeah. But I'm not sure it's that simple. What can we realistically do to help?
Well, I wouldn't say that superheroes is entirely off base. Animals are fighting for their survival every day, and we can be their allies.
Okay, I like that.
Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Stopping deforestation is absolutely critical,
Yeah.
but it's a huge problem. Choosing sustainably sourced products like wood and paper is one way to make a difference. And supporting organizations that are working to protect forests is another.
Okay, that makes sense. What about our everyday choices?
Reducing our reliance on single-use plastics is huge.
Because of pollution.
Exactly. Plastic pollution is choking our oceans and harming countless marine animals. Simple choices like using reusable bags, water bottles, food containers can make a real impact.
And I imagine being mindful of what we buy in general is important too.
Absolutely. Supporting sustainable fishing practices, avoiding products that contribute to habitat destruction. These are all things we can do. And remember, knowledge is power. The more you learn about the challenges facing animals and their habitats, the better equipped you'll be to advocate for change.
So it's not about feeling overwhelmed. It's about focusing on what we can control.
Exactly.
Our own actions.
And don't underestimate the power of collective action.
Like talking to people.
Exactly. Talk to your friends, your family, share what you've learned, advocate for change. These things can create a ripple effect of their own.
So the takeaway here is that we're all connected. And even though the challenges are big, our actions can make a difference.
I think that's a great way to put it. Here's a final thought for you to consider. What's one small change you can make in your life to help protect animals and the ecosystems they inhabit?